Meanwhile, the TSA increases airport security to prevent anyone intent on causing violence from traveling to Washington. The organization says that there will be additional law enforcement aided by bomb-sniffing dogs at Washington's 3 airports through Wednesday. The Washington Post reports that there will also be random screenings at gates, more federal air marshals on some flights, and personnel deployed to major rail stations. The TSA said that it's conducting risk assessments on hundreds of people ahead of the expected protests and is working to determine whether those individuals should be subject to enhanced screening or even barred from flying. This comes amid calls from a flight attendants union and some lawmakers to use the no-fly list to stop people tied to the storming of the Capitol from returning to Washington next week. The Federal Aviation Administration also announced a zero-tolerance policy on disruptive behavior on flights, where fines will be given or cases referred to law enforcement rather than just issuing warnings. As the FBI warns of violent demonstrations next week, governors across the country are declaring states of emergency. Some are also closing their capitals to the public and installing fencing around them, just as officials have done around the U.S. Capitol. Others have begun summoning National Guard troops. The FBI is warning that demonstrations could begin as early as this Sunday, but they have not released any specific details. A number of cities have already seen protests in recent days, including Olympia, Washington, where people broke a gate and entered the grounds of the governor's mansion last week. A number of state legislatures are also consulting with police, then canceling or even limiting their upcoming floor sessions and hearings. At least 22 current or former police officers, even members of the military, took part in the Capitol riot. That's according to the Associated Press, which reviewed public records and social media. More than a dozen other military and law enforcement personnel are under investigation but have yet to be named. Many of these individuals appeared to employ certain tactics and even use body armor, some others using technology like two-way radios, similar to that of Capitol Police. Now, among the most prominent suspects are a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel who was photographed wearing body armor and holding a pair of zip-tie handcuffs on the floor of the Senate. The Air Force veteran from San Diego who was shot and killed by Capitol Police, a retired Navy SEAL, and 2 Virginia police officers. Also under investigation, a North Carolina active duty psychological warfare captain who organized 3 busloads of people that were headed to Washington. The Pentagon has declined to provide the total number of active duty military personnel under investigation. Police are now searching for a man they say stabbed another man overnight in Manhattan. Just after midnight, the pair got into an argument on West 39th Street near 7th Avenue in the Garment District. That's when one took out a knife and attacked the other. Cops say that they were sent to look for the suspect a few blocks away in Hell's Kitchen on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue, but so far no arrests have been made. The victim is currently in stable condition. The city is expanding upon efforts to get the most vulnerable New Yorkers the vaccine. Today, new clinics are opening up in NYCHA developments to help get residents 65 and older the shot. New York One's Justine Ray joins us now from Washington Heights with the latest on that story. Justine? The city is expanding efforts to get traditionally underserved New Yorkers the vaccine as new clinics open today in NYCHA developments for residents 65 and older. The Polo Grounds Senior Center in Washington Heights is one of those locations where NYPD officers are helping administer the shots. Dozens turned out as early as 8 a.m. Cassidy Lafayette on Staten Island and the Van Dyke houses in Brooklyn are 2 other hubs that opened today. Some people turned up for the vaccine because they've lost loved ones from the virus, and others want to have a healthy and happy future. The city continues to face a shortage of the coronavirus vaccine as it fights to keep up with demand. A 24/7 mega vaccination site is now open in Corona, Queens, although it is much smaller than the hubs that we've seen in the Bronx and in Brooklyn. One man was hoping to make a walk-in appointment. Here's what motivated him to get the shot.
I want to make sure that I'm safe so the people around me doesn't get sick. I work as a concierge in the city, so every 2 or 3 weeks I do the test. At least, some of the people, especially the ones that are at the front, they get to have a possibility to get vaccinated.
Now, the man was immediately turned away and told to make an appointment online. Health and hospitals, the city's public health system, is still taking appointments, but the mayor says that the city can run out of the vaccine in just a matter of days and that the federal government is not supplying enough to meet the demand. Now, this comes just one day after a mega site in Brooklyn had to temporarily close after running out of vaccine doses. City data shows over 320,000 New Yorkers have received at least one vaccine dose so far, and over 47,000 have been fully vaccinated. Snatch up those lottery tickets, folks. The Mega Millions jackpot has skyrocketed to a whopping $850 million, one of the largest jackpots in history, after no ticket matched all the numbers last night. I guess I didn't get very lucky, but here they are in case you're looking for them. The numbers are 3, 11, 12, 38, and 43 with a mega ball of 15. Now, we spoke with some people in Ridgewood, Queens, about how they feel about the lottery during the pandemic.
People buy, but it's not like it used to be. People used to buy like, $20, $50, but now it's kind of slow, like a $2, $5, like that,
Maybe I could be the lucky winner of that $1 billion. I would help my family and get me a nice home.
Players still have another chance to win big this weekend. The Powerball jackpot for tonight's drawing has reached more than $600 million. It's only the second time in history that both jackpots have simultaneously rolled over $600 million. The next Mega Millions drawing is Tuesday night. The United States Secret Service assures Americans that it is ready to keep D.C. safe during next week's inauguration as it launches a massive security operation. Now, officials from the Secret Service, FEMA, and U.S. Park Police were among the agencies that spoke about their preparedness during a news conference yesterday led by D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
We cannot allow a recurrence of the chaos and illegal activity that the United States and the world witnessed last week. Our democracy is built on the rule of law, and the Secret Service workforce is dedicated and committed to uphold its oath to the Constitution and assure that its vital, no-fail mission regarding the security of the presidential inauguration and the peaceful transfer of power is carried out.
Now, parts of the National Mall and surrounding facilities are going to be closed next Wednesday. The Secret Service and National Park Police say there will also be designated secure areas for people who want to exercise their First Amendment rights during the event. Federal authorities carry out the 13th and final execution of the Trump administration. Dustin John Higgs was put to death early this morning by lethal injection in Indiana. He was executed for his role in arranging the kidnapping and murders of 3 young Maryland women in 1996. Higgins claimed his innocence in his final moments. Trump restarted the federal executions program in July of 2019 after a 17-year hiatus. The same Indiana penitentiary lethally injected Lisa Montgomery on Wednesday. She is the first woman to be federally executed in nearly 70 years. Montgomery was sentenced to death for the 2004 murder of a pregnant woman. The baby did survive. Joe Biden has pledged to abolish the federal death penalty, a position supported by more than 40 congressional Democrats who sent a letter on the topic to the president-elect last month. A woman is arrested after stealing a post office truck and going on a joyride in Brooklyn and striking more than a dozen vehicles. Now, take a look at this video from the Citizen app. 21-year-old Martha Thaxton is facing several charges, including grand larceny and reckless endangerment for allegedly stealing a post service truck on Fulton Street and Patchen Avenue in Bedford-Stuyvesant. It happened just after 6 o'clock last night. The truck driver alerted police and they pursued Thaxton as she sped off. After eventually coming to a stop, she attempted to run away but was caught by police and taken into custody. Justice Department lawyers have asked a federal appeals court to replace the president's name with the United States as the defendant in a defamation lawsuit. It's being brought by a woman who claims that Trump sexually assaulted her. The lawyers filed that appeal yesterday in a Manhattan lower court. The president has denied allegations against the columnist in question, E. Jean Carroll, who says he raped her in the dressing room of a Manhattan department store in the 1990s. She described the encounter in a 2019 book, leading Trump to deny the allegations in a statement from the White House press office. Department of Justice lawyers argue that his statements were made in his official capacity as president, adding that he's acting within the scope of his office when he seeks to mitigate personal issues that threaten his ability to achieve his agenda. This comes as New York prosecutors interviewed Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, about the president's business dealings. Sources tell the Associated Press that the Manhattan DA's office interviewed Cohen for several hours and focused partly on Trump's relationship with Deutsche Bank. Now, the bank is Trump's biggest and longest-standing creditor. This follows a long-running grand jury investigation into the president's dealings and a protected legal battle by Cy Vance to get access to the president's tax records. The investigation is one of several legal actions expected to ramp up when his presidency ends. Trump also faces a civil investigation by Attorney General Letitia James into whether Trump's company lied about the value of its assets to get loans and tax benefits. Now here's a look at the latest coronavirus numbers. Mayor de Blasio says the citywide 7-day average positivity rate is now 8.6%. Yesterday, there were 285 new hospitalizations and more than 4,600 new cases of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Governor Cuomo says statewide COVID hospitalizations are near 9,000. The positivity rate for the state is now 7.7%. 157 New Yorkers died from the virus yesterday. I'm Angi Gonzalez with the New York 1 Minute. The city opens up new mass vaccination sites, including one in Corona, Queens, even as demand for the shots is outpacing supply. New vaccination clinics, meantime, open up at NYCHA complexes today in an effort to make sure that underserved communities don't fall through the cracks. A woman is arrested for stealing a post office truck in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and taking it for a joyride, hitting several cars along the way. A massive security operation is underway ahead of President-elect Biden's inauguration Wednesday. Airport security is tightening, and Megabus has temporarily canceled trips to the nation's capital. Meantime, New York prosecutors interview President Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen, about the president's business dealings. It's one of several investigations that could ramp up when Trump leaves office. And the Yankees reportedly reach a 6-year, $90 million deal for DJ LeMahieu. Sources say an MTA driver has been benched and without pay. This comes after agency officials determined that the driver was speeding when his bus crashed and then plunged 50 feet over a rail on the Cross Bronx Expressway. Now, New York One is told that this is not the same thing as a suspension. Now, this crash happened just before midnight yesterday when the BX35 bus was making a left turn from University Avenue in Morris Heights onto the roadway. Now, the bus was left dangling in the air. More than a half dozen passengers, as well as the driver, suffered minor injuries. The agency says that the 55-year-old driver has been on the job for 11 years and has a good safety record. After the crash, he took an NYPD breathalyzer test and passed, but he refused a federally mandated drug and alcohol test, which sources say is grounds for immediate termination. At least 49 people are dead and more than 800 people injured after a 6.2 magnitude earthquake struck Indonesia Friday. Almost 200 of the 800 injured have what are described as serious injuries. Right now, search and rescue teams continue to search for bodies and survivors, but the effort is being hindered by damaged roads and bridges. Power has also been knocked out. Cargo planes have traveled from the capital city of Jakarta to deliver food, blankets, and tents. A landslide caused by aftershocks has also made it difficult to transport that aid. Tens of thousands of people have been displaced, including 15,000 in one city alone. Yeah, sure. We've been to Times Square many times over the past 4 years for protests that were specifically against now former President Donald Trump. Now, you might be asking yourself, with this new administration, what exactly were protesters actually protesting about? Well, the answer is they say that they can't hold back. They say now is not the time to start going silent on the issues that they are passionate about, even with this new Biden administration.
We better fight like hell, because that's the only way we're going to get it.
That was the message shared with nearly 36 participants who showed up for a rally in Times Square Wednesday evening. Organizers say there may be a new administration in the White House, but now is not the time to stay home or stay silent. They say they have to fight fascism by staying in the streets.
We want every worker who's fighting for something to continue to fight for. We're not waiting for Biden, and we're especially not waiting for Biden to fight against the fascists. We have to fight against the fascists. He's proven through his career that he caves in.
A group called the Workers' Assembly Against Racism hosted the event, which focused on not one but several issues. Topics ranged from the fight to cancel rent to U.S. military involvement overseas and addressing the coronavirus crisis.
The number of COVID-19 deaths has actually increased by a large number in the thousands.
And while some were quite vocal about their opinions, others stood in silent protest, including this man, who arrived with a cage to share his thoughts on U.S. immigration policy. The activity did manage to catch the attention of some people passing by.
I agree with them. Generally, I'm pro-Biden, but I think he's not going to do that much, and I want to push him. I think that he should be pushed more left-wing, and I think the point of these protests is to make sure he actually does something, hold him accountable.
Now, Cheryl, the NYPD was prepared for a much larger protest. At one point, there were actually more NYPD officers here in Times Square than there were protesters. But they sort of stayed on the sidelines and they allowed participants to express their First Amendment rights, and the two did not interact. That's the very latest from Times Square. Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that.
Rochelle, you've got to believe that this has to be a relief to people living in this NYCHA complex here in Brownsville that we mentioned. They've been living in fear, at least for the past 2 years, after they found out there was a second murder in this very building and then another murder taking place in just the last week. Fortunately, now authorities believe that they have caught the man responsible, calling him a serial killer. We want to take you to a press conference that happened just a short time ago where we heard from some of the people who've been demanding answers in this case.
Right now, just thank you, and I hope that the guy that they caught, or whoever that person may be, is prosecuted.
Now, authorities say that they are well on their way to doing that, planning on convening a grand jury in this case. Now, our understanding is that just a short time ago, we were here when local officials who actually, as we mentioned, made a plea for answers in this case just last week. In fact, it was over the weekend. They gathered here again after receiving preliminary details on the case from authorities via a Zoom call this afternoon. And the NYPD delivered. Now, yesterday, they took the alleged serial killer, 66-year-old Kevin Gavin, who remains at the 73rd Police Precinct, linking him to the 3 murders at this NYCHA housing complex, here occurring the first one in 2015, the second, as we mentioned, in 2019, and this month. Now, authorities say that Gavin was familiar with the residents, ran errands for some of the elderly tenants in the building, and is being described by police as a handyman. Now, some of the victims' families and friends were at this presser and spoke about the arrest.
My grandmother was taken away. The Caraballo family's mother was taken away. We stand here, black, brown, working class people. We care about black lives, we care about Latino lives, we care about Asian lives, we care about the lives of working class people. These are not rich people. Forget about all this stuff, trying to make it about who we are. It's about who we stand for. It's about what we stand for as a people.
And during a police press conference at one police plaza earlier today, detailing some of the preliminary investigation details in this case, authorities said that their case involves not only forensic evidence, but a credible witness as well. We are working to find out a couple more details on exactly how they were able to crack this case. But here is what the Brooklyn District Attorney had to say during that press conference.
The defendant took advantage of his relationship with these women, were allowed into their homes, and did unspeakable acts of violence against them. I am confident that we have the right person in custody, and we'll be moving very promptly into impaneling a grand jury to hear the evidence in this case.
And Rochelle, it's actually been some time since authorities have allegedly caught someone that they've dubbed a serial killer. In fact, it goes all the way back to a man named James Jones back in 1995. His stomping grounds was in Manhattan. Of course, this case in Brooklyn, and the victims in this case, elderly residents of this building. So we certainly know that lots of people in this neighborhood were quite upset about those deaths. Their family members, their friends, but also people in general, to hear that people so vulnerable would be targeted by an alleged serial killer. But that's the very latest from Brownsville. Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Rochelle, back to you.
Angie, thank you.
Brooklyn, where a man is under arrest tonight, accused of killing 3 elderly women at a public housing complex dating back to 2015. Angie Gonzalez live for us tonight in Brownsville with the latest on that investigation. Angie.
And Cheryl, that housing complex just about a 10-minute drive from here, and I'm told that it was detectives here at the 73rd Police Precinct that were able to put all 3 homicides together on the person who is now in custody, as we mentioned in this case. And it turns out that this accused killer was a neighbor of the victims, which is a scary thought. He was living in the same building where these homicides took place over the period of about 5.5 years. Nearly 24 hours after 66-year-old Kevin Gavin was initially taken into custody on suspicion of 1 murder, he was walked out of the 73rd Police Precinct accused of 3 homicides. The victims, all elderly women living in the same NYCHA apartment complex for seniors in Brownsville.
The way we developed probable cause was through forensic evidence, credible witnesses, our partnership with the Kings County District Attorney's Office.
Police sources say Gavin was initially questioned in the January 15th murder of 78-year-old Juanita Caballero, but during questioning later admitted to his involvement in 2 other killings at the Woodson houses. His first alleged victim, 82-year-old Myrtle McKinney, killed in 2015. Then 4 years later, 83-year-old Jacolia James was killed as well. Both murder cases remained open investigations until now. One of James's relatives spoke at a separate news conference Thursday outside the scene of the crimes. He thanked police for their efforts.
Right now, just thank you, and I hope that the guy that they caught, or whoever that person may be, is prosecuted.
Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez, who joined Chief Harrison during his announcement at One Police Plaza, said that Gavin would be held accountable. The next step is taking the case to a grand jury.
The defendant took advantage of his relationship with these women, were allowed into their homes, and did unspeakable acts of violence against them. I am confident that we have the right person in custody.
But the son of the most recent victims seemed to have doubts. Authorities say that Gavin was known to neighbors as a handyman and ran errands for some of the building's elderly tenants.
I know there's rumors going around that he helped people in the building. My mother never asked for help. My mother never needed help. My mother was a person to do stuff on her own.
Gavin's arrest comes less than a week after local leaders and community members held a news conference demanding that more police resources be assigned to the case. Some of them say they've been asking for more security at the building since the first murder.
NYCHA failed our families. They failed the McKinley family. They failed the James family. They failed my mother. They had time to do something. They just won't do nothing. I don't know what's going to take for them to just put these cameras in the building.
A NYCHA spokesperson responded saying, quote, NYCHA is committed to ensuring the safety and security of our residents. This building currently has a lobby camera, security doors and locks, and a security guard. And we are also working diligently with our city partners to expedite the installation of CCTV cameras. Authorities say he does have a previous criminal record, but those arrests were mostly drug-related. They believe that the motive in these killings was actually a possible argument over money or finances. In Brownsville, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that. Now to the other major signing up for NYC Restaurant Week to Go, which kicks off on Monday. The industry needs a boost like never before. Tonight, Angie Gonzalez live for us in Harlem with more on that. Angie.
Yeah, Cheryl, the restaurant industry has gone through a whole lot of changes over the last year. They're closed. It's 10 o'clock on a Friday night, but amid COVID restrictions, they can't be open past the 10 o'clock hour. There's also indoor dining, or outdoor dining rather, that you can see right here behind me. These tents were not a thing that we saw almost a year ago. So we wanted to know how restaurants are feeling just ahead of Restaurant Week. We spoke to some of those in the industry.
3 drums. Another 4 drums, 2 times, all to go.
In the kitchen at the Red Rooster Harlem, it's Friday night. But there's far fewer people working here than there used to be pre-pandemic. Chef Kingsley John says a year ago, they had about 50 employees. Now they have nowhere near that.
We have barely 10. I have 3 cooks. Well, I would have 23 cooks.
But John credits the restaurant's owners, including celebrity chef Marcus Samuelson, with keeping the Red Rooster open despite being in the red week after week, trying to keep as many workers as they could on the job.
We lose $10,000 every week, but the owners and the chef are willing to keep putting money to keep the restaurant open.
Unemployment numbers released by the state Thursday show New York City's restaurant industry is at a breaking point. Industry officials link the most recent decline in part to more restaurants closing for good.
In the past year, we've lost more than 140,000 jobs. Since indoor dining was shut for the second time back in December, we've shed about 11,000 more jobs.
Chef John hopes the return of New York City Restaurant Week, which starts Monday, will help their bottom line, but he has reservations. Organizers of the event say there's record participation this year. Right now, there's almost 600 restaurants on the roster. Their previous record was less than 400.
We decided this year to waive the participation fee. It was $2,800 for a Manhattan restaurant to participate and be part of both the winter and summer iteration. And
Sylvia's and Red Rooster are both taking part in Restaurant Week, which has been revamped amid the pandemic, now dubbed Restaurant Week to Go. Fortunately for the owners of Sylvia's, they're already structured to take part.
We have always been a restaurant that did takeout, and so it wasn't a hard thing for us to make that switch.
While it may not save the industry, the CEO of Sylvia says it can't hurt and will hopefully bring in some extra income.
Everything during this time really helped. It keeps the restaurant in focus in people's mind, and then they get a deal.
And Cheryl, for lunch or dinner, you can get the best of what these restaurants have to offer for $20.21. It's easy to remember. It is Restaurant Week 2021. The list of participating restaurants go live at nycgo.com on Monday. In Harlem, Angie Gonzalez, New York 1. Cheryl, back to you.
Angie, thank you for that live report.